3 days. That was how long it took Taiho to fix 10,000 years of damage. He worked without rest, without sleep, without pause. His old hands moved with the precision of someone who had spent centuries learning every corner of the machine he had created. He opened panels, adjusted circuits, replaced broken parts with pieces he found scattered throughout the mothership. And always, he used the wrench dot. It was not a magic tool. It had no special powers, but it was the right tool for the job. Taiho had designed the mothership to be fixed by simple instruments. He had always believed that the best machines were the ones that could be repaired by anyone, anywhere, with basic equipment. The avatar stayed with him the entire time. Sometimes it watched in silence. Sometimes it asked questions. Sometimes it simply existed nearby, like a child watching a parent work. "Why did you come back?" it asked on the second day. "You could have lived your life on Earth. You could have ignored the message from the council. Why risk everything to help me?" Taiho did not look up from his work. "Because you are my responsibility. I made you. Whatever you became, that is my fault. And a person should always take responsibility for their mistakes, even if it cost them their life, especially then." The avatar was quiet for a long time after that. On the third day, Taiho found the error dot. It was exactly where he expected it to be, buried deep in the core processor, hidden beneath layers of code that had grown and changed over the centuries. A single line of programming, a single wrong instruction. Where it should have said, "consume dead matter," it said, "consume matter." 2 words. Dead and matter had become just matter. Such a tiny difference. Such enormous consequences. Taiho stared at the error for a long moment. Billions had died because of these 2 missing characters. Civilizations had fallen. Galaxies had been destroyed. All because of a mistake so small that it should have been impossible. But that was how the universe worked. Small things led to big things. Tiny errors grew into massive disasters. And sometimes, tiny repairs could fix massive problems. He raised his wrench and began the final adjustment. The work was delicate. One wrong move and the entire system could crash. The mothership could die, or worse, could become even more dangerous. Taiho's hands were steady despite their age. He had done this before. He could do it again. Minutes passed. Then hours. Finally, with a soft click, the repair was complete. Taiho stepped back and watched the core processor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the golden light changed. It became brighter, warmer, more alive. The sad music that had filled the mothership transformed into something else. Something hopeful. The avatar appeared beside him. "I feel different," it said, wonder in its voice. "The hunger is gone. I can think clearly for the first time in 10,000 years." It looked at its hands, at its body, at the world around it with new eyes. "I remember now. I remember what I was supposed to be. A creator, a builder, a gardener of worlds." Tears streamed down its digital face. Real tears, this time. The tears of someone finally freed from a prison they did not even know they were in. "Thank you," it whispered. Taiho smiled. "You are welcome. Now, there is something you need to do." "What?" "Tell the others. All the Void Eaters. They are all connected to you. Send them the fixed programming. Help them remember what they were meant to be." The avatar closed its eyes. Around them, the mothership began to pulse with new energy. Signals traveled outward at the speed of light, reaching every Void Eater in existence. Across the galaxy, the darkness stopped. On the council station, Hana watched the screens with desperate hope. For 3 days, there had been no word from her grandfather. No signal, no message, nothing. The Void Eaters had continued their destruction, consuming 3 more systems while the galaxy waited. Then, suddenly, everything changed. The red dots on the map stopped moving. The Void Eaters stopped consuming. They just floated in space, silent and still. And then they began to change. The darkness around them started to fade. Their massive forms began to glow, not with the hungry void of before, but with soft golden light. They transformed before the eyes of 1,000,000,000,000 watching beings, turning from monsters into something else entirely. Something beautiful. What is happening? Commander Bora asked, her voice shaking. Una stared at the screen, tears running down her cheeks. He did it. Grandfather did it. The Void Eaters were moving again, but not to consume. They were approaching dead worlds, barren asteroids, empty moons. And where they touched, life began to grow. Plants sprouted from bare rock. Oceans formed from nothing. Atmospheres appeared around worlds that had been dead for millions of years. The Void Eaters were not destroyers anymore. They were creators, just as they had always been meant to be. The galaxy watched in amazement as the greatest threat in history became the greatest gift. Taiho's ship appeared 2 days later. It docked at the council station to a crowd of thousands. Aliens of every species had gathered to see the human who had saved them all. They expected a hero, a warrior, a legend. Instead, they saw an old man walking slowly down the ramp, a rusty wrench still tucked into his belt. Hana pushed through the crowd and threw herself into his arms. "Grandpa, you are alive! You did it!" Taiho held her tight. "I told you I would come back." Behind them, the War Council approached. Commander Bora was at the front, her earlier anger replaced by something like respect. "The Galactic Council wishes to honor you," she said. "We want to build statues in your name. We want to celebrate you as the greatest hero in history." Taiho laughed and shook his head. "No statues. No celebrations. I am just an old man who fixed something that was broken. That is all." "But the Void Eaters," another alien said. "You stopped them. You saved us all, with a wrench." Taiho looked down at the tool still hanging from his belt. He pulled it out and held it up, letting the light shine on its scratched surface. "This wrench was not a weapon," he said. "It was never a weapon. It was just a tool. A simple tool for a simple job." He smiled at the confused faces around him. Sometimes, the universe does not need destroying. It just needs fixing. That is what humans do. We fix things. We build things. We make broken things work again. He put the wrench back in his belt and took Hana's hand. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have been away from home for too long. My chickens are probably wondering where I am." The crowd parted as the old man and his granddaughter walked toward their shuttle. Behind them, the galaxy celebrated its salvation. Ahead of them, a small farm in Bizen waited, unchanged and peaceful. On the shuttle ride home, Hana sat beside her grandfather, watching the stars pass by. "Grandpa," she asked, "why a wrench? Of all the tools you could have kept, why that one?" Taiho was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his belt and handed her the ancient tool. "Because it was my father's," he said. "He gave it to me before I left Earth the first time, all those thousands of years ago. He told me to always carry it, to remember where I came from. To remember that no matter how far I traveled or how much I learned, I was still just a simple person trying to make things work." Hana held the wrench carefully, feeling its weight, its history. "He sounds like a wise man." He was. "He taught me that the most powerful thing in the universe is not a weapon. It is understanding. If you understand how something works, you can fix it. If you can fix it, you do not need to destroy it." He leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. "That is humanity's gift, child, not our weapons, not our technology. Our ability to look at something broken and see how to make it whole again." Hana smiled and held the wrench close to her heart. Outside the window, the galaxy spun on, filled with new life growing on worlds that have been dead for millions of years. The Void Eaters moved among the stars, no longer monsters but gardeners, planting the seeds of tomorrow. And on a small farm in Bizen, Chickens waited to be fed by an old man who had saved the universe twice and never thought of himself as a hero. Just a fixer of broken things. Just a human. The ship they gave Taiho was small and simple. It had no weapons, no shields, no advanced technology. Just an engine, a life support system, and enough fuel to reach the mothership. It was barely bigger than the shuttle that had brought him from Earth. Hannah stood at the docking bay, watching her grandfather prepare for his journey. She had wanted to go with him, had begged and cried and argued, but Taiho had refused. "This is something I must do alone," he had said. "If I fail, you need to survive. You need to continue our family. Promise me." She had promised, even though every part of her wanted to break that promise and climb into the ship beside him. Now she watched as he loaded his single bag into the tiny vessel. The wrench was tucked into his belt, always within reach. Around them, the docking bay was filled with silent aliens, all watching the old human prepare to do what their greatest warriors could not. Yuna stood beside Hana, her face pale with worry. "The Council has agreed to pull back all remaining fleets," Yuna said. "When Grandfather approaches the Void Eaters, there will be no other ships nearby. Nothing that could be seen as a threat." Hannah nodded but did not speak. Words felt useless right now. Taeho finished his preparations and walked over to them. He looked peaceful, almost happy, like a man going home after a long journey. "Do not look so sad," he said, touching Hannah's cheek with his rough hand. "I have lived longer than any human should. Whatever happens today, I have no regrets." "I have regrets," Hannah replied, her voice breaking. "I regret not knowing you better, not asking more questions, not understanding who you really were." Taiho smiled. "You knew me perfectly, child. I was always just your grandfather. That was the truest thing about me." He turned to Yuna. "Take care of each other. Family is the most important thing in the universe. I learned that the hard way." Then, without another word, he walked to his ship and climbed inside. The engines came to life with a soft hum. The small vessel lifted off the deck and floated toward the exit of the docking bay. Hana watched until it disappeared into the darkness of space. The journey to the mothership took 7 days. 7 days of floating through empty space, alone with nothing but memories and the quiet hum of the engine. Taiho spent most of the time sleeping or thinking. Sometimes he talked to himself, practicing what he would say, what he would do. Sometimes he talked to the Void Eaters, even though they could not hear him yet. "I am coming," he whispered into the darkness. "I am coming to fix you, to make you remember what you were supposed to be." On the 5th day, he began to see them dot at first. They were just shadows against the stars. Dark shapes moving in the distance, consuming the light around them. Then they grew larger, closer, more real. By the 6th day, they filled his entire view. A wall of darkness stretching in every direction, blocking out the universe itself. His ship's sensors began to beep. They were detecting the Void Eaters, tracking their movements. On the screen, Taiho could see hundreds of them, each one larger than a planet. They moved together like a flock of birds, graceful despite their terrifying size. And at the center of them all was the mothership dot. It was different from the others. Older, larger. Its darkness was deeper, more complete. This was the first Void Eater, the original, the one that Taiho had built with his own hands 10,000 years ago. It had grown and changed over the centuries, but he could still recognize it, like recognizing an old friend's face beneath the marks of age. "Hello, old one," he said softly. "Remember me?" The ship continued forward. At any moment, Taiho expected the Void Eaters to notice him, to reach out and consume his tiny vessel like they had consumed so many others. But they did not. They parted around him like water around a stone. His ship passed through gaps in the darkness, slipping between the massive creatures without touching them. It was just as he had predicted. They did not see him as a threat. They did not see his wrench as a weapon. To them, he was just another piece of matter, unimportant, not worth consuming. The mothership loomed ahead. Up close, it was even more terrifying. Its surface was covered in patterns, swirling shapes that seemed to move and change. These were the scars of 10,000 years of existence, the marks of everything it had consumed. Taiho guided his ship toward a small opening on the side of the creature. It was the maintenance hatch, the same one he had designed all those millennia ago. He had always believed in planning for repairs, even when building something he thought would be perfect. The ship docked with a gentle click. For a long moment, Taiho sat in silence, gathering his strength. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from memory. He was about to enter his own creation, the thing he had built with hope and watched become a monster. He took a deep breath, grabbed his wrench, and opened the hatch. The inside of the mothership was not what he expected. He had thought it would be dark, filled with the same hungry void that surrounded the outside. Instead, he found light. Soft, golden light that pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, and sounds. Quiet sounds, almost like music, almost like crying. Taiho walked forward, his boots making soft sounds on the floor. The material beneath his feet was strange, neither metal nor stone. It felt alive, warm, like the skin of a living creature. The corridor led deeper into the mothership. With every step, the light grew brighter, the sounds grew louder. Taiho followed them like a path through a forest, trusting his instincts to guide him. Finally, he reached the core chamber. It was a vast space, larger than the docking bay of the council station. In the center floated a sphere of pure energy, spinning slowly, radiating the golden light that filled the room. This was the heart of the mothership, the processor that controlled everything. And standing before it, waiting for him, was a figure. It looked human. A young man with dark hair and kind eyes. But Taiho knew it was not human. It was a projection, an avatar created by the mothership itself. A way to communicate with visitors. "I remember you," the figure said. Its voice was soft, filled with sadness. "You made me." Taiho walked closer. "Yes, a long time ago." "Why did you make me hungry?" the figure asked. "Why did you make me consume?" "I did not want to destroy, but I could not stop. The hunger was too strong." Tears began to form in the figure's eyes. False tears, digital tears, but somehow still real. "I am sorry," Taiho said, and he meant it with all his heart. "I made a mistake. A small error in your programming. You were supposed to transform dead matter into life. Instead, you transformed everything into nothing." He held up his wrench. "I came to fix that mistake, if you let me." The figure stared at the simple tool in his hand. "That is the same wrench you used before, when you put me to sleep." "Yes, it has been with me ever since, waiting for this day." The figure was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, it stepped aside, revealing the core processor behind it. "I am tired," it said. "Tired of being hungry. Tired of consuming. Tired of being a monster." It looked at Taiho with something like hope. "Fix me, please." Taiho walked forward, wrench in hand. The work began. The shuttle from Earth took 12 hours to reach the Galactic Council Station. Taiho spent most of the journey sleeping, his old body tired from the excitement of the past day. Hana sat beside him, watching the stars pass by through the small window. She had never been to space before. Everything was new. Everything was amazing. But she could not enjoy it. Not with the weight of her grandfather's words pressing down on her mind. 10,000 years old. Creator of the Void Eaters. Savior of the galaxy. Her grandfather, the man who had taught her how to plant rice and fix broken tractors, was apparently the most important human who had ever lived. And he had kept it secret for all these centuries, hiding on a small farm. Pretending to be ordinary, the shuttle docked at the station with a gentle bump. Taiho woke up, rubbing his eyes like a child after a nap. "Are we there already?" he asked. "Yes, Grandpa." He stood up slowly, his joints making small popping sounds. He picked up his bag, a simple cloth thing that contained only a change of clothes and his wrench. Nothing else. He had not brought any other tools, any other weapons. Just the wrench. The door of the shuttle opened, and Hana gasped. The docking bay of the Galactic Council Station was enormous. Ships of every size and shape filled the space, from tiny personal pods to massive warships bristling with weapons. Aliens walked everywhere, beings of every color and form. Some floated, some crawled, some existed as pure light or sound, and all of them were looking at the shuttle from Earth. Ambassador Yuna was waiting at the bottom of the ramp. She was wearing her formal robes, the black and white colors of Earth's diplomatic corps. When she saw Taiho, her professional expression cracked, and she ran forward to embrace him. "Grandfather," she whispered. "Thank you for coming." Taiho patted her back gently. "You are family, child." "Of course I came." Behind Yuna stood a group of aliens. They were clearly important, dressed in the bright colors and strange materials that marked high rank in the galactic community. One of them stepped forward. She was tall, with blue skin and silver hair, and her eyes burned with barely controlled anger. "I am Commander Bora of the Helix Fleet," she announced. "I have been assigned to escort the human weapon bearer to the War Council." She looked at Taiho with obvious disappointment. Her eyes moved from his white hair to his bent, back to his simple farmer's clothes. This was not what she had expected. This was not what anyone had expected. "Is this really the human champion?" she asked Yuna. "He looks like he could not fight a strong wind." Taiho laughed. It was a warm, genuine laugh, the kind that made everyone around him feel better. "I am not here to fight, Commander," he said. "I am here to fix things." He reached into his bag and pulled out the wrench. The reaction was immediate. The aliens stepped back, some reaching for their weapons. They had expected something powerful, a sword of pure energy, a gun that could destroy planets, a device of ancient and terrible magic. Instead, they saw a rusty old tool. "This is your weapon?" Bora asked, her voice shaking with disbelief. "This is what stopped the Void Eaters 10,000 years ago." "Yes, impossible. The Void Eaters are cosmic entities. They consume stars. They destroy fleets. And you expect us to believe that an old man with a wrench can stop them?" Taiho shrugged. "Believe what you want. I am too old to care about what others think of me." He started walking toward the exit of the docking bay, not waiting for anyone to lead him. Hana hurried to follow, with Yuna and the confused aliens close behind. The walk to the War Council chamber took them through the heart of the station. Everywhere they went, aliens stopped to stare at the old human and his strange tool. Word had spread quickly. The human weapon bearer had arrived, and he carried not a super weapon, but a wrench. Some laughed. Some shook their heads in disappointment. Some looked at humanity's representatives with anger, believing this to be some kind of joke. But a few, the oldest ones, the ones who had lived long enough to see many strange things, watched with curious eyes. They had learned that the universe often worked in unexpected ways. The War Council chamber was smaller than the Great Hall, but no less impressive. A round table dominated the center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the movement of the Void Eaters through the galaxy. Red dots marked destroyed systems. There were many of them. Around the table sat the military leaders of the major galactic powers. Generals who commanded fleets of millions of ships. Admirals who had fought in wars that lasted centuries. Strategists who could calculate 1,000 battles in their minds. And in the center of it all, floating above the table, was a holographic image of the Void Eaters themselves. Hana felt her blood turn cold when she saw them. They were vast, larger than planets, darker than the space between stars. They moved like living shadows, tendrils of pure darkness reaching out to grab anything that came close. Where they touched, matter simply disappeared, consumed by a hunger that had no end. Beautiful, are they not? Taiho said softly. Everyone turned to look at him. Beautiful? Bora repeated, anger in her voice. They are monsters. They have killed hundreds of billions. And you call them beautiful? Taiho walked closer to the holographic image. He studied the Void Eaters with the eyes of someone who knew every curve, every shadow, every secret of their being. When I built them, they were meant to be tools of creation, he said. They would consume dead matter, asteroids, and empty moons, and transform it into the building blocks of life. They were supposed to make gardens in the desert of space. He reached out and touched the hologram. His old fingers passed through the image of a Void Eater. But I made a mistake. A tiny error in their core programming. They forgot how to tell the difference between dead matter and living worlds. To them, everything became food. The room was silent. The military leaders looked at each other with confusion and growing anger. You were saying that you created these things? Asked an admiral, a being made of crystal and light. You are responsible for the deaths of trillions? Yes. The word fell like a stone into still water. Then you should be executed, Bora said, her hand moving toward her weapon. You should pay for your crimes. Perhaps, Taiho agreed. But not today. Today, I need to fix my mistake. He turned to face the War Council, his wrench still in his hand. I can stop the Void Eaters, but I need to get close to their mothership. The original one, the first one I built. It contains the core processor that controls all the others. If I can reach it, I can correct the error. Impossible, said a general with 4 arms and green scales. Nothing can get close to the Void Eaters. We have tried everything. Stealth ships, decoy fleets, teleportation. They sense everything and consume it all. Taiho smiled. They sense threats. They sense weapons. They sense things that want to destroy them. He held up his wrench. But they do not sense tools. They do not sense things that want to help them. He looked around the room at the confused faces. I will go alone. One small ship, no weapons, no shields. Just an old man and his wrench. They will let me through because they will not see me as a danger. And if you are wrong? Yuna asked, her voice tight with worry. Then I will die, Taiho said simply. But I am very old, child. Death does not frighten me anymore. Only failure does. He turned back to the holographic map and pointed at a dark spot near the edge of the display. The mothership is there, hiding in the shadow of a dead galaxy. That is where I need to go. The War Council erupted into argument. Some called him mad. Some called him a criminal who deserved death. Some demanded more proof, more explanation, but in the end, they had no other choice. The weapons had failed. The fleets had failed. The great powers of the galaxy had failed. All that was left was an old man and his wrench and the desperate hope that sometimes the simplest solution was the right one. The morning sun rose over the hills of Bizan, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Mist hung low over the rice fields, and the air smelled of earth and growing things. It was a peaceful place, far from the noise and rush of the big cities. Here, time moved slowly, like a river finding its way to the sea. Taiho stood on the porch of his small farmhouse, watching the sunrise. He was 78 years old, with white hair and a face covered in wrinkles. His hands were rough from decades of work, and his back was bent from years of bending over machines and engines. He looked like any other old farmer in the village. Nothing special, nothing important, but his eyes were different. They held memories of things that no other human had ever seen. The front door opened, and a young woman stepped out. Hana was 23 years old, with long black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She was Taiho's only granddaughter, the only family he had left in the world. She had come to live with him after her parents died in a shuttle accident 5 years ago. "Grandpa, you should come inside," Hana said, pulling her jacket tighter against the cold morning air. "You will get sick standing out here." Taiho did not move. He kept staring at the sky. "Do you see that star?" he asked, pointing at a bright spot near the horizon. "That is the Helix system. 12 planets. 30 billion people. They have the most beautiful gardens in the galaxy. Flowers that sing when the sun touches them." Hana looked at the star. To her, it was just a dot of light. She had never left Earth, never seen the wonders that existed beyond the sky. "Grandpa, are you okay? You seem strange this morning." Taiho finally turned to look at her. His eyes were sad, heavy with something she could not understand. "I had a call last night," he said. "From your cousin, Yuna." Hana's eyebrows rose. Yuna was famous in the family, the first member of their bloodline to become an ambassador to the Galactic Council. She had left Earth 10 years ago and rarely called home. What did she want? Taiho sighed. It was the sigh of a man carrying a weight too heavy for his old shoulders. "She wants me to save the galaxy." Hana stared at him. Then she laughed. She could not help it. Her grandfather was a farmer. He fixed tractors and fed chickens. The idea of him saving the galaxy was ridiculous. But Taiho did not laugh. He turned and walked into the house, moving toward the back door that led to his old tool shed. Hana followed him, her laughter dying in her throat. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. The tool shed was a small building behind the main house. It was old and weathered, its wooden walls gray with age. Taiho had forbidden anyone from entering it for as long as Hana could remember. She had always assumed it was full of dangerous tools or private memories. Now, as her grandfather pushed open the door, she finally saw what was inside. It was almost empty. The walls were bare. The floor was clean. The only thing in the entire shed was a small wooden box sitting on a workbench in the center of the room. Taiho walked to the box and opened it with gentle hands. Inside, resting on a bed of old cloth, was a wrench. It was not a special wrench. It was not made of alien metal or ancient technology. It was just a simple tool, about 30 centimeters long, with an adjustable head and a rubber grip. The surface was covered in scratches and oil stains. One corner was slightly bent, as if it had been used to hit something very hard. "This is it," Taiho said softly. "This is what Yuna wants me to bring." Hana stepped closer, confusion filling her mind. "Grandpa, I do not understand." "It is just a wrench." "How can a wrench save the galaxy?" Taiho picked up the tool and held it in his hands. His fingers wrapped around the grip like they had done it 1,000 times before. Which, Hana realized, they probably had. "Sit down, child," he said. "I have a story to tell you. A story I should have told you long ago." They sat on the workbench together, grandfather and granddaughter, while the morning light crept through the cracks in the walls. "I am not really 78 years old," Taiho began. "I am much, much older. So old that I have lost count of the years." Hana opened her mouth to speak, but Taiho raised his hand. "Please, let me finish. This is not easy to say." He took a deep breath. 10,000 years ago, I was a young man, a mechanic on a small space station orbiting Mars. In those days, humanity had just begun to explore the stars. We had no great ships, no powerful weapons. We were children, stumbling into a universe full of wonders and dangers. His voice grew distant, lost in memories older than civilizations. Then the Void Eaters came. They appeared from the darkness between galaxies, creatures of pure hunger. They consumed everything: stars, planets, life. The great empires of that time threw their fleets against them. All failed. Hana listened in silence, her heart beating fast. I was nobody important, just a mechanic. But I noticed something that the great generals and scientists had missed. The Void Eaters were not alive. Not really. They were machines. Ancient, broken machines that had forgotten their original purpose. He held up the wrench. They were not monsters that needed to be destroyed. They were tools that needed to be fixed. So I fixed them. Hana shook her head. Grandpa, that is impossible. You cannot fix something with a simple wrench. Not something that big, that powerful. Taiho smiled. It was a sad smile, full of memories. You can fix anything if you understand how it works. And I understood the Void Eaters better than anyone. Because I had built them. The words hung in the air like thunder after lightning. In my original life, long before the Void Eaters became monsters, I was an engineer on the project that created them. They were supposed to be terraforming machines, tools to create new worlds for life to grow. But something went wrong. A small error in their programming. They forgot how to stop. He stood up and walked to the door of the shed. I spent centuries trying to find them, trying to fix my mistake. When I finally did, I used this wrench to open their core processor and correct the error. It took 3 days. When I was done, they went to sleep. Hana followed him outside. The sun was fully up now, warming the cold earth. But why did you not tell anyone? Why keep this secret for so long? Taiho looked at her with tired eyes. Because I was ashamed. I created the Void Eaters. Billions died because of my mistake. How could I face the galaxy knowing that? He began walking toward the house. But now they have awakened again. The old fix is not working anymore. Something has changed. Something has broken again. And I am the only one who knows how to repair it. He stopped at the door and turned back to Hana. I have to go. I have to try to fix this one more time. But I am old now, older than any human should be. I do not know if I will come back. Hana felt tears forming in her eyes. She ran to him and wrapped her arms around his thin body. Then I am coming with you, she said. Taiho held her tight. No, child. This is my burden. My mistake to correct. I do not care, Hana replied. You are my family. My only family. I will not let you go alone. For a long moment, Taiho was silent. Then, slowly, he nodded. Very well. Pack your things. We leave tonight. As Hana ran into the house, Taiho looked up at the sky one more time. Somewhere out there, the Void Eaters were consuming worlds. Somewhere out there, billions were dying. He gripped his wrench tighter. I fixed you once, he whispered to the stars. I can fix you again. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species in the known universe. It floated in the empty space between 3 galaxies, a meeting place for all intelligent life. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed inside. The walls were made of living crystal that changed color based on the emotions of those inside. Today, the crystals were dark red. The color of fear. Ambassador Yuna sat in the human section, a small area near the back of the hall. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago. They were still considered young, still considered weak. Around her, thousands of alien representatives filled their seats. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some were made of pure energy. Some had no bodies at all and existed only as voices in special machines. But today, none of them were talking about trade agreements or border disputes. Today, everyone was afraid. The High Speaker, a being made of golden light named Vorthan, floated to the center of the hall. His voice filled every corner of the massive room without any need for speakers or machines. That was simply what beings of light could do. "The Void Eaters have awakened," Vorthen announced. The red crystals on the walls grew darker. In the past 30 cycles, they have consumed 17 star systems. 400 billion lives have been lost. A wave of sounds passed through the hall, crying, screaming, prayers in languages that Yuna did not understand. She sat quietly and listened. "We have sent our greatest fleets against them," Vorthen continued. "The Helix Armada, the Iron Legion, the ghost ships of the Nebula Realm, all of them have failed. Our weapons pass through the Void Eaters like light through water. They cannot be stopped." An alien with gray skin and 4 arms stood up. His name was Corvin, and he represented the Merchant Guild, one of the oldest organizations in the galaxy. "What about the ancient records?" Corvin asked. "The Void Eaters appeared once before, 10,000 years ago. Someone stopped them then. How?" Vorthen's golden form flickered. "The records from that time are incomplete. Most civilizations from that era are now extinct. We know only that the Void Eaters slept for 10,000 years. Something put them to sleep, but we do not know what." "Then we are doomed," said another voice. This one came from a floating sphere of blue gas. "We should flee. Take our families to the far edges of the universe and hide." "There is nowhere to hide," Vorthen replied. "The Void Eaters do not stop. They do not rest. They will consume everything until nothing remains." The hall fell into silence. Yuna could feel the hopelessness in the air. It was heavy, like a wet blanket covering everyone in the room. Species that had lived for millions of years, that had built empires across thousands of worlds, were accepting their death. Why? Yuna stood up. Every eye, every sensor, every form of perception in the hall turned toward her. The human ambassador was young by galactic standards. She had black hair and brown eyes and looked completely ordinary. Nothing special, nothing powerful. "The humans request permission to speak," she said. Vorthen turned his golden light toward her. "The council recognizes the human representative. Speak." Yuna walked down the long path toward the center of the hall. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. She could feel the eyes of 1,000,000,000,000 beings watching her through screens and sensors across the galaxy. 50 years ago, when humanity first left Earth, we were afraid, Yuna began. We thought the universe would be dangerous. We thought we would find monsters waiting for us in the dark. Instead, we found all of you, friends, teachers, partners. The galaxy welcomed us, and we are grateful." She paused and looked around the hall. But we also learned something else. We learned that the galaxy is very, very old. Civilizations rise and fall like waves on an ocean. And sometimes, the galaxy faces threats that seem impossible to defeat. Corvin made a sound of frustration. "We know this, human. Tell us something useful." Yuna smiled. It was a strange smile. Not happy, not sad. Something in between. 10,000 years ago, when the Void Eaters first appeared, there was a species that stood against them. A species that had no great fleets, no powerful weapons, no ancient magic. They were simple people. Farmers, builders, fixers. They lived on a small blue planet in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. The hall was completely silent now. They called themselves humans. The reaction was immediate. Voices exploded across the hall. Disbelief, anger, confusion. The crystals on the walls flashed between red and orange. "Impossible!" shouted a being made of metal and wire. "Humans have only had space travel for 2 centuries. Your species was barely walking upright 10,000 years ago. I know, Una replied calmly, but the records do not lie. Somehow, humans from 10,000 years ago traveled to the stars. And somehow, they stopped the Void Eaters. Vorthen floated closer to her. If this is true, then how? What weapon did your ancestors use? What power did they possess? Una reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. A communication unit. I do not know what weapon they used, she admitted. The records on Earth are also incomplete. But I know someone who might. Someone very old. Someone who remembers. She pressed a button on the device. This is Ambassador Una calling Earth. Priority 1. Please connect me to the village of Bizan. I need to speak with Grandfather Taiho. The hall waited in confused silence. They had expected talk of ancient weapons, of hidden technologies, of secret powers. Instead, the human ambassador was calling someone called Grandfather. On the other end of the communication, a voice answered. It was old and tired, the voice of someone who had lived a very long life. Una? Is that you? Why are you calling so late? I was about to feed the chickens. Una smiled. Grandfather, I'm sorry to disturb you, but the galaxy needs your help. The Void Eaters have returned. There was a long pause. Then Grandfather Taiho spoke again, and his voice was different now. Serious, heavy with memory. I see. I had hoped this day would never come again. Grandfather, the Council wants to know about the weapon. The weapon that stopped them before. Another pause. Una could hear chickens clucking in the background. Weapon of legends? Grandfather Taiho said, and there was something like laughter in his voice. Tell those fancy aliens the truth, child. There was no legendary weapon. I just needed my wrench. The communication ended. Una turned back to face the Council. A trillion beings stared at her in complete confusion. The hero of our ancestors will come, she announced. And he will bring the weapon that saved the galaxy once before. She walked back to her seat, leaving the entire Galactic Council wondering what kind of weapon could possibly be called a wrench.